Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad you're here. I've been prepping all kinds of things to do for St. Patrick's Day, and any of these projects could be tweaked for any other holiday, of course, or just for spring, but I'd like to show you all kinds of things to get you ready for St. Patrick's Day. And so I also have available for you a book with all kinds of ideas. It's got Irish traditions, it's got sayings and blessings, symbols, just so much more, and you can get that free as a download in my Facebook group. It's called Coming Home, and I'll put a link below in the description, but you can get that free if you join my Facebook group, Coming Home. And I have found a local source for some really nice hand towels, and I did one of these at Christmas time, and so now I'm going to do a hand towel specifically for St. Patrick's Day. And these are for decoration. These aren't for drying your dishes or you know, wiping your hands. These are for decoration, and they'll hang right on my stove, on my aga, and that will be a decoration for St. Patrick's Day. And I found some really pretty fabrics in some nice green colors to go with my towel. And I've been working in Cricut Design Space, and I've just actually chosen various images that are shamrocks and resized and flipped and just got several. And so now let's go ahead and get our hand towel made. Okay, for the next project, I'm really excited about this one because I'm kind of using some new things and trying some new techniques. So I got this really pretty tea towel. So what I want to do is put some pretty fabric cutouts on this tea towel. And so I got several shades of green fabric, and I have already cut out with my Cricut several shamrock shapes that I'm going to do. And I just want to show you a couple of things. I usually buy fabric in fat quarters. This particular one isn't a fat quarter, but one thing that my mom taught me about fabric that has been so useful to me is that when you have a piece of fabric like this, that when you do your cutting, always cut off to preserve your selvage. Now, I taught sewing for several years at school, and I was always trying to teach the children it's not salvage like a dump, it's selvage. And it's that woven edge that keeps all of the threads together as they make cloth. And you can tell it's a selvage because it's got a little bit of a different weave, and it's kind of locked. Those threads are locked. And some selvages are harder to see because they're not marked. A lot of selvages, it's just so easy. But you need to keep track of where your selvage is in case you're making something that requires either straight grain, you're cutting your pieces on the straight grain, which would be running parallel to the selvage, or cross grain, which is perpendicular to the selvage, or sometimes if you're doing like a bias tape, you're actually running at a diagonal from the selvage, and that's called on the bias. And so just a little, some things to keep in mind as you're using fabric and sewing. Now, this project we're doing now, it doesn't matter where the selvage is, but I wanted to point that out as you cut your little pieces of fabric to pay attention to that. Okay, so I'm going to get my ironing mat out. I'll put a link above to show how I made that for my desktop, because I need a desktop one because it's handy. And I'm going to go ahead and bring my Cricut Easy Press on here, and it's already warmed up. And so I want to show you how I actually made these cutouts. The first thing I made when I got my Cricut was to cut out a pattern out of fabric. It did not go very well. For one thing, the fabric was not a great quality, and I have found out since then that it really helps to have a stabilizer on the back of the fabric. So that's what we're going to talk about here for a minute. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, I've got a piece of fabric that I've cut to do a cutout. So first I'm just going to do a quick iron on it. And oh boy, you've seen me with my home iron doing these things, and I'll tell you, this Easy Press makes quick work of all kinds of things. And then I have a piece of Pellon Some people call it Wonder Under. It can be called Heat and Seal. But what it has, it basically has a glue, an adhesive on it, and then a piece of paper that kind of protects that adhesive. And here's just a quick something. I have mentioned in other videos these zip things that I get from the dollar store, these big envelopes. And I keep all my fusibles, I've put a label on there. I keep all my fusibles in there because it just makes it so easy. And then up in my sewing cupboard, just so easy to keep track of those, because most of those I don't have huge pieces of them. Now, when you cut your Pellon, you want to make sure that it is slightly smaller than your fabric piece, because I don't want to get any of that adhesive onto my ironing mat. So I'm actually going to cut it down just a bit because I want to keep it off that mat. So my Pellon is slightly smaller than my fabric. Now I've got my press ready. It takes about 15 seconds of just constant pressure to get that adhesive then put into the fabric. So when you do this, you're going to make sure your fabric is wrong side up and your Pellon or your Wonder Under, your iron-on, is going to be adhesive side down. So then what happens is that adheres this backing to the fabric. And then I usually set it over on my table somewhere to cool off. So the way this works is when you take off that backing, then the adhesive is left on the fabric, and then that fabric can be ironed on to something else. So that's why we go through this thing to get that on. And so what I found when using my Cricut to cut fabric, that it didn't cut really well without the backing. I'm going to have to learn a little bit more about that. But these have just cut beautifully with the backing on them. They just need something to help stabilize. Now I'm going to move my heat press out of the way. And now let's go ahead and cut our shape with the Cricut. So in order to do that, you're going to need the fabric grip mat. So it's pink and it says fabric grip on it. I want to make sure that I position this exactly so that it will cut my my shamrock pattern just right. So I'm going to trim off any fabric that doesn't have the Wonder Under or the Pellon on it, because I don't want to be cutting in those areas. I want to make sure that what gets cut is all covered with Pellon. So I'm looking on my design space, and I'm going to make sure that this gets placed correctly so that all parts of it can be cut. So I'm just going to put that on there and really push that down. Okay, so in order to cut fabric on the Cricut, you have to have a rotary cutter, and it comes like this. It has an outside plastic case. You take that off, but it also has a plastic thing around the gears. You don't ever take that off. That stays on. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my regular blade, and then I'm going to install the rotary blade so that the gears fit into the gears. Just like that. Close it up. There. And now I've got the rotary cutter in. So now we can go ahead and feed in our mat. It has the fabric securely down on the mat. And we'll let it cut. Now, before I remove this, I always check to make sure that it cut just fine, and it did. Now I can go ahead and remove it from the machine. What I want to do when I remove this off of the mat, I want to use my Cricut spatula, because I can take all this off and I'm not needing that, but I want to make sure when I remove it with that paper backing. And if I, many times I've seen that if I start that without my spatula, it starts to pull up. And so just make sure you use your spatula, then you can just pull it up with the paper backing. So now back to the ironing board. We're going to bring back the press. Now what I'd like to do is get my towel ironed. Been really nice because it's so big. It irons really, really fast. So I like to fold them into thirds. And so I usually kind of start out that way because I like how that looks. And I am going to go ahead and press that. So that I can see exactly how I want to position my clovers. And so now I have some lines that I can follow, but I want to have it flat on my ironing board when I go ahead and press. But I like being able to see those lines. Now, here are my little clovers. So I'm going to get an idea of the position that I want them in before I take off that paper backing. So I'm going to work from the back to the front. So I'm just going to flip this over, pull up that paper backing so it just comes off so easily. I can just pull that off and then I can feel that adhesive on the back, and then I'm going to lay that back on. Now I'm just going to step back and just eye that. Very good. Okay, so now here we go. Now this is a 15-second press at 350, and I'm just going to give it good pressure. Okay. All right, now I'm just going to let it cool a little bit. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually going to come back through. Let's go ahead and do the back side of this. Get those wrinkles out of there. This is a real pretty tea towel. I've been finding that I can find tea towels in places I didn't expect. So that's been kind of fun. Actually, I want to iron that out. That seam, that line. Okay, now let's take a look at that and we'll see if it looks like it is holding down. It is. I'm not seeing any raised areas. So now I'm going to do that very same spot just for another few seconds, just to get that nice and solid. There. All right, now let's fold that up. And this is 100% cotton. So from, what I've been trying, I can see that, iron-on would be fine. Infusible ink, maybe not so much. But look at that. And if I get it folded, ready for my stove. There we go. Look how pretty that is. How fun that's going to be for St. Patrick's Day and even into spring, because they're nice springy colors. Now, I can leave it like this, or I can come back in with my sewing machine and go ahead and sew an applique stitch around each of those shamrocks. And then that would hold it on permanently for sure. Where this is just decoration, I'm not too worried about it. And so there we go. There's a project with fabric. Okay, so there is our finished hand towel. It was actually pretty easy. I hope some of the little tips and tricks that I shared with you will be helpful, and that you'll take the time to make a hand towel for decoration in your home. And don't forget to get my free download in my Facebook group Coming Home of my little booklet for St. Patrick's Day with all kinds of ideas and sayings and things that you can use to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Be sure to subscribe, because I have coming up very shortly some more videos about St. Patrick's Day that you can use for actually any holiday, but that way you'll know as each one comes out, and you'll be able to craft along with me. And so we'll see you next time in my craft room.